Welcome to High Stakes, episode 27. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. High Stakes is produced by Mike Lawrence. You can find him on Twitter at Awesemo. And our guest today is Ben Rasa. He is the Stokastic Director of Betting. He has big wins in PGA and NFL DFS. You can find all of his sports betting content on Stokastic. I'm excited. He's our first real guest who is sports betting centric. So this should be a fun conversation. We can ask some questions that we haven't really asked other guests before, but we will ask a lot of the same general questions as well. Ben, first, I'll start with how are you today?
I'm good, man. I'm really excited to be on. I watched this show. Always a fun kind of vibe to hear people in the community kind of tell their stories. So happy to get into it. It's gonna be a little different. Yeah, I'm a little more betting centric these days, but no, really excited to be here now.
We've had actually several people ask for you to be a guest. People want to hear about the sports betting stuff. So I'm excited to have you on. Now, whether I'm going to be able to actually ask smart questions about sports betting is another question, but you can guide me a little bit, I guess, with the sports betting questions. And I got some great questions from Mike Lawrence, a producer today, so we can ask those as well. But we'll start with a just general background questions that I ask everybody. Somebody actually specifically said that they want to hear about your background, how you got into sports betting, DFS, etc. So we'll start there. We'll start with what kind of background do you have in statistics? Do you have any formal or informal training?
Not really. I took stats in college and whatnot. I like math, but nothing too formal. Like I definitely wouldn't say that I'm someone that really excels with statistics in, a very advanced setting. I know enough where I think I'm able to kind of articulate what I need to know. And then the rest of it, I look for, and we're going to get into this, of course, maybe some other ways to kind of catch up where I may be lacking. So I'd say maybe informal training and stats, definitely experience, took some, but not my strong suit now.
Okay. And then what about computer programming? Do you have any informal or formal training there?
No. Now we're getting no formal, no nothing, no Python or snakes, whatever the hell it's called. I would love snakes. It's been on my list for 5 years. I'm going to learn how to code. And then I just never do it. Obviously, I know a lot of people in our industry and on the DFS side, that's what they do. And it can be incredibly valuable. But I think kind of one of my overarching mantras of this is kind of know what I know, and I know what I don't know. And that's just something I was never able to kind of grasp. So no, I have no training in computer programming whatsoever.
Okay, yeah, I'm on the same page as you that I've been like, oh, I should really learn how to do this, and then I just don't because like I haven't really needed to, and like you and I, we both work for Stokastic. We've got the tools. People are doing all the work for us, so there's just no real need to do any kind of computer programming ourselves. Are you strong in Excel?
Yeah, so Excel is something that I kind of learned when I was kind of young, and just always have leaned on that mostly for just like data analysis. Certainly here at Stokastic internally, of course, we use it, but even for my own personal, whether it's DFS or betting, just you're able to see a lot with Excel. So that is one thing I do have training in, and that's been a big asset.
Yeah, it's really nice. I am not good with Excel, and that's definitely something that I feel like I should learn, especially now working in Stokastic, doing some of the stuff behind the scenes, and we're using sheets and stuff. And like I have no idea how to do stuff that other people are doing pretty quickly. So definitely useful to have some Excel background, but I don't have it.
No doubt. I'll give Josh a quick shout out on that. Like I was like, oh, I love Excel. I know Excel. He took it to a whole nother level for me. Like some of the guys obviously we have here are just really great with that stuff, and it's really helped me kind of add that layer to my process.
Yeah, just even automating like run sheets and stuff. I know Josh is just really good at having that stuff done quickly, automatically. Yeah, that would be very helpful for somebody like me who just types it all up. All right, tell me about your professional background prior to DFS or any related hobbies.
So in college, I majored in finance, and I played poker, a lot of poker, and I kind of just assumed that I would play poker. And then right as I was graduating, Black Friday hit for people in the poker world. Basically, online poker got shut down. So that was not great. So I just kind of, used the degree, which is what I think you're supposed to do after college, and just got a normal job for a little bit. I've always bet, like that's just something that was kind of ingrained. And then it's one of those things, slowly but surely, like I think a lot of people, you're in kind of not a dead end job, but just you're looking for something more, and you start to transition a hobby into maybe something more serious. And then finally you say like, maybe I can do this a little more, and some avenues opened up. But yeah, for me, I was just a finance major, someone who played a lot of poker, didn't play fantasy sports. So that's one of the weird things growing up. I was a poker and better person, not a fantasy player.
That's really funny. So you said that you've been betting forever, and so I was going to ask you where you live, and I just opened up the screen so I could look at your background. I see Hartford Whalers. Do you live in Connecticut?
No, I do live really close to Connecticut. I live in New York.
Okay, and
So
sports
we're
betting obviously legal in New York.
finally long overdue. Yeah, I was, like most people, the offshore sites when that was kind of your only avenue growing up and whatnot.
Okay,
But now finally we're getting on board in more and more states. It's been very exciting, of course, to see more states kind of join the legal sports betting.
yeah, I was able to sports bet when I was in college in Massachusetts, but I don't remember if it was actually legal or if I was also doing the offshore stuff at the time. The Bovada, I think it was even before I was using Bovada. I don't even
Yeah,
remember, but yeah, definitely not
I
has
went to
not been as.
college in Mass too.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, I went to UMass in
Oh, you went to,
Amherst.
okay, nice. I
Yeah.
went to Tufts University
Okay.
outside of, yeah, in Somerville.
There you go.
That's cool. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I honestly didn't know that. We're finding out stuff live on the show. Look at that.
That's right. Masters. And you said so you graduated shortly before Black Friday. I was trying to, is that 2010?
11 for me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you
So
graduated right. I graduated college in 2006, so a little bit older than you. We wouldn't have run into each other there.
no.
But
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Same kind of window though. So that happened all right at the tail end. And that, I mean, who knows? In my mind, it was like, oh, I'll just play internet poker forever. Like, would I have really done that? I honestly don't know. But my decision was taken away from me, so we'll never know.
Did you get to a point where you were good at poker?
So I think it was probably a combination, and it mirrors a lot of these industries. I was a little late to it. It was just so easy that I don't even know how good I was. I just realized that, it's a zero-sum game, that most people are awful. So yeah, I wish, like most things in hindsight, I wish I took it more seriously. I was in college. I was not like grinding as hard as I probably should have been because I thought it'd be around forever. And then you look back and you're just like, wow, I should have really crushed. But yeah, I've always liked poker, particularly online poker. That's definitely a strong suit of mine.
Yeah, yeah. So I was got pretty into online poker right after I graduated college, I think in like 2006, 2000, maybe 2007, one of those years, shortly after graduating college. I never got to the point where I was good. Like I got to the point where I would win for like a couple days in a row, but I didn't have the uh dedication, I guess. I wasn't ever studying. I never read anything about how to play. I didn't really have the dedication. It's not the word I'm looking for. I didn't have the fortitude to, like, if I had aces to fold like when I should have after a while, like I would just, I don't know, I could never get to the point where I would just not lose all my money quickly after I was winning. I was also, drinking whiskey while I was playing and
Yeah,
stuff.
there's
Probably
there's
not the
that
best
too.
approach. Yeah, I always thought that I was going to be good at poker, and I got a lot better as I played, but never got to the point where I was actually a winning player before I gave up on it. And I was also only playing online. I thought that was, so fun that I could just sit there on the couch, have baseball on in the
Great.
background. At the time, I was watching a lot of baseball and play some poker while I was watching. So those were good times. But yeah, sad that those are over. Um, all right. So you were a finance major. You got into finance for a while. How long were you doing a finance job?
Um, Maybe like 3 years, I want to say. A couple, not even. I graduated. Like I said, I was kind of figuring stuff out, playing some poker, just doing whatever. I just took a normal finance job, and then pretty quickly, I just was just like, all right, I'm starting my ascent into DFS, and never looked back.
So this is in like 2013. You started.
Little later, probably, yeah, but in that ballpark for sure.
Okay. And what drew you into DFS? You said you hadn't played fantasy sports before.
Yeah. So I shouldn't say like most people, somewhat random, incredibly fortunate. I had a friend, a lot of my friends gamble. And I remember around that time, one of them was just like, there's this new thing. It's like season long fantasy, but it's every day and you can win money. And I was just like, that is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Like, I hate season long. Why would I want to do it every day? They're like, no, you should try this. I tried it and I was just like, yeah, uh, that's definitely not for me. Just, it was an interesting concept, but just not something I could see myself getting into. And then, like a lot of things, I'm just, life is taking over. And I was just kind of like looking for something. And ironically, my therapist of all people, he was telling me something completely unrelated about try to find something daily to do. And for whatever reason, the concept, of course, of DFS stood out. And so I started to force myself to, it wasn't like I was repulsed by it. It was just not something that I was immediately grasped by. And I started playing, a little here, a little there. And then, like a lot of things, you start to get into it. I started to realize it was mirroring poker and the fact that I thought it was really unsolved. And then I started to really enjoy it a lot more than I ever thought I would. So yeah, kind of just a fluky coincidence, but that was my ascent. It wasn't anything where I was just like immediately hooked by any stretch.
Okay, so you said you did your finance job for about 3 years before you discovered DFS, started playing DFS.
Yep.
Were you trying like right away to become a professional at DFS? Like, was that the idea? I'm going to quit my finance job and do this full time, or what was the?
No, so yeah, I mean that in theory would have been awesome. It was just something again. I think I was just looking for it as a hobby, something to maybe give my life a little more flavor, a little more, like, hey, you get off work or you can do this. It's just kind of a different thing. It's kind of fun. And so no, not at all. It wasn't even about the money at the beginning. It was just like more of an activity, more of a challenge. I love puzzles, stuff like that. And then, like everything, it becomes, maybe if it was 95-5, then it's 75-25. And soon I'm devoting more time to DFS than I am anything else. And then you realize maybe I should make a shift, make a change.
Okay, and were you a winning player right away?
So I definitely didn't start it and just immediately was crushing by any stretch. But I think what I realized pretty quickly, and I can thank poker for this, is I knew almost immediately that something wasn't right with this in the sense that it was very unsolved. Like people were doing things that even I thought were pretty quickly that made no sense. I started with at college sports when they were legal in New York. Now you can't play college football. I love college football, and I immediately was just like, some of the constructions and the line, like, this doesn't make sense. There's definitely something here. So I took my lumps like everybody else, but once I kind of fine-tuned what was going on, I was fortunate to get really lucky pretty early, and that gives you a lot of confidence that maybe you can do something with this.
So just out of curiosity, so when you say people were making decisions that clearly didn't make sense in like college football, is that like they were not stacking their
Yeah.
lineups or? Okay.
So when we're going back, I know for a lot of people who maybe are like, they have just discovered DFS, some of these things, it's just like, wait, what? I mean, this is back when the sites didn't really police who was in, who was out. Like, if a guy was hurt or inactive, like they didn't have a giant red O next to his name. So like there were dead lineups all over the place. You mentioned the stacking in college football. There's a lot of dual threat. Like people didn't understand the concept of a running quarterback, how useful that was. So very simplistic things in hindsight, but at the time, a lot of things were just undiscovered.
Okay. So also just people playing players who didn't project that well, like non-rushing quarterbacts who maybe didn't
Yeah,
have high projections, that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Okay.
just very very simple stuff that now the sites like ours would immediately help you out there. That didn't really exist back then. You're on your own to some regard.
Right. Just using projections is a
Yeah,
huge boost
that
relative to,
concept.
man, if I could go back and just play with good projections back in 2011, 2012, whatever, that would be
Oh,
yeah, killer. Which and
yes.
that's how people I assume that's how guys like Condia, the guys who were crushing back then, they just made good projections and that's all it really took.
Absolutely. There's no doubt.
Those were the days. Okay. In which sport or sports do you think you have the biggest edge?
So what, just to kind of bridge what we were just talking about, it was 100% college football. I was crushing college football, and then they stopped offering college sports in New York. And I was like, well, this is a big problem because NBA is great, NFL is great, but I think they're towards being more solved. And the sport that I thought was the most unsolved, the sport I knew little to nothing about, was golf. And I was just like, I'm going to learn golf. And I spent a long time learning golf. Now I'm kind of, in some regards, I think people probably equate me more with golf than any other DFS sport. It's the sport I probably had the most success. And I think of all the sports, it's probably the one that, even though it's high variance, I still kind of regard it as the sport that if I was in a tournament for my life, I would prefer it to be PGA, as crazy as that sounds, considering it's a roller coaster every time.
It's funny. You're the I think third guest in a row who is pretty PGA centric. Like I
Okay.
consider that to be your main sport.
Yeah.
Had the degenerate on last week. He's a big PGA guy. And then we had who do we have before that? Wiley was on before they
Oh
did
yeah,
it. So
for sure.
big time golf guys. So that's pretty funny. I had not had many golf guys at all. It's not a sport that I excel at. I'm actually, it's the sport that I have lost the most at. There are a few sports that I have negative ROI, but golf I've lost, tens of thousands of dollars lifetime. So not my favorite sport, but I'm going to ask you. So I actually had this question lower down, but I'm just going to ask you now. So for PGA, what goes into it? So is it just ownership versus optimal, or is there more to it? Do you care about the weather, the tee times, course history, form, stuff like that? What's most important to you in PGA?
Yeah, so it's a crazy sport, like I said, and I think the reason that I probably gravitated towards it is because I think that game theory really helps because it's ironic. I hate baseball. And it has so many parallels to baseball because, the example I always use for people, look, if LeBron's on the court for 40 plus minutes, even if he plays terrible, he has to outscore the guys that don't play just by being out there. But Trout can go 0 for 4. And in golf, the best player can get cut and some random can make the cut. And so it takes on just kind of a different mentality of where I'm certainly looking at things, weather and tee times. And I think I was one of the earlier people to try to remember that you play a different course every week. I think people get, these other sports, every basketball court is the same. Every football field is the same, but golf, some courses require a different skill set. So week to week, a guy may look like he's playing erratic, but maybe it's just he's excelling at certain layouts. And I think things like that have really helped. But all in all, going back to the tools here at Stokastic, the ownership and things like that have really helped because when you get those pictures, where, okay, maybe this is a good place to make a stand. Very aggressive. You could be punished, but the game theory in PGA is very strong, I think.
Okay. And so you don't do any of the projection. Do you do our PGA projections?
I do not. No.
Okay. So you
Thank
probably
God.
don't know. I'm curious to what extent like the strength of the golfer on the particular course would go into a projection. I don't know. I guess it all comes down to betting lines, right? There's a big part of how projections are made, which would factor that kind of thing in.
It definitely factors it in. And, there's the age old debate of like, long-term form versus short-term form. Because in golf, guys, you go back 2 years, you're looking at world-class players and you fall out of form, you could be missing cuts left and right. And our projections do a really good job of weighing that kind of at different intervals and kind of painting that picture. But I think, with PGA, it's a roller coaster. And I mean, I've had crazy stretches of both where you can't miss and where it's just like, I'm legitimately never going to win again. It was a good run, and that's just kind of the nature of it. But I still think there's a lot of untapped potential with PGA.
Interesting. Okay. Maybe it's a sport that I'll give another shot
give
at
it
some
another
point.
shot. Come on in.
I was playing a lot this year, and this year is when I've lost most of my money in PGA. And now I finally got to a point where I was like, I gotta turn things around with sports that I'm better at before I get back into PGA. As far as college football goes, you said it used to be your bread and butter. Now you can't play college football DFS. Do you still do any content related to college football DFS?
Yeah, I do. So I do our live before lock, me and Matt Kajeski every single week. And I still, like I said, obviously it's my favorite sport to bet. I still love to follow it. And there are times I'm pretty close to Connecticut, so I can drive over the border and enter my lineups there. It's just on Saturday mornings, it's a little tough sometimes, but I do miss it. College, you could play 2 quarterbacks and that it gets real crazy. So if you are in a state, I would really encourage people to give college a shot. It's a lot of fun. One of my favorite DFS sports.
Yeah, so I actually am in Minnesota. We are allowed. I did play 1 week this year. I have not really given it the full like strength of given it my attention to the extent that I could, but I've only, I think, hand built lineups. No, I've crunched them out using Fantasy Cruncher and kind of looked at who the players are that project well and then hand built based on what it gives me. And I did think it was pretty cool that you can use the super flex on a second quarterback and do a second stack with. It does seem like it should be really fun. Maybe I'll have to give it some more attention. But the fact that I didn't even know for sure that you did college football content shows you how little I have paid it. Like I don't even watch the college. Maybe I'll try doing that, watching the Saturday college football show and getting into it at least one of these weeks. Give it a shot because it does seem like it'd be fun.
It's a ton of fun, Matt. Obviously, there's no one better. I know, just a straight guru. And there's little intricacies. So the one other thing, I won't dive too deep into it. When you take a sack in college football, you lose the yards. So like there are guys that have like negative 60 rushing yards in games. So again, these little edges, more and more they're being discovered, but it's a totally different world with college sports. You have 45-point spreads, things you just don't see in the NFL. Really, really cool sport.
I don't remember who it was. I was looking at before some showdown slate. I was trying to figure out if a rookie quarterback was a running quarterback. So I was like, well, he doesn't have NFL stats. So I looked at his college stats and I was like, he has negative 70 rushing yards in
Yep.
college. That doesn't make any sense. This is clearly an error. And then somebody DM'd me later and was like, actually, in college football, a sack is yeah. So explained it to me. But that is wild that counts as negative rushing yards for a quarterback.
It makes a
Pretty
huge
fun
difference.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I've got a few sports betting questions coming from Mike Lawrence, our producer, and we can, just have a little conversation about sports betting since haven't really been able to do that before. So I'll start with Mike's questions. He says, which would you say you're stronger at? Is it DFS or sports betting / prop betting?
So I definitely have my run in DFS where I thought that the fields were still soft, but as everyone knows, the tools, the sites, the players, everyone's getting way better. Sports betting's that way too, but it was my first passion. Got a lot more experience in sports betting, so I think that more and more now that it's taking back over, I would say sports betting is more where I belong and more where I feel at home the most. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, Okay, second question. DFS and prop betting have a lot in common as they're both based on projecting and predicting individual statistical performance. Do you think having a grasp on one better informs the other? And if so, which one helps the other more?
For sure, they're intertwined. So the thing about prop betting that I think is probably a larger conversation. It's a great thing. It's very soft. Props are a lot easier to bet than sides. There are overarching issues with props that I think certainly if you're a casual bettor, you're not going to run into them. If you're doing something for real and you're betting, like there's liquidity issues trying to fill, you can move those markets a lot easier. You can get limited. Like if you're betting outrageous props, you have a much higher chance of having the books say like, we don't want this type of action. So there's a lot of other things that go into it, but there's no doubt that props and DFS go hand in hand because we're drilling down to players. That's the big thing. If I think, Texas is going to win in football, it doesn't really matter who does it as long as they cover. But when we're talking about is it going to be a run centric attack? Is it going to be a volume based attack? These are the things that we talk about all across our platform on these shows. So I do think it's kind of a circular process where they're both helping each other, but I always look to the prop world and to Odd Shopper before I build, particularly for like Showdown when it's one game. I think those props are very valuable pieces of information because Vegas knows how to project just about as good as anyone.
Okay, so I want to key in on one thing you said, which is
Sure.
if you're making outrageous bets, you'll get limited. What do you mean by that? So it's always been my impression as somebody who doesn't do sports betting. My impression has always been you get limited if you win too much. But it sounds like there's more to it. What do you mean by like outrageous bets that will get you limited?
Yeah. So again, it's definitely your mileage may vary. It can be a noisy topic, but the way I just kind of think about it, if you're in a nationally televised game and there's a million people watching, a lot of people are going to want to bet that. It makes sense. People want to watch their team. People want to bet on LeBron, blah, blah, blah. If you're betting on like some random seventh man on the Pistons to have over 0.5 steals, like if you're betting a lot of money on that, it's a pretty good sign that you probably know there's a reason that you're doing that. You're not doing for entertainment most likely. And so I think that if that's all you're doing, if you're very selective, obviously if you're angle shooting, which is kind of a different topic, where what I mean by that is like if you're reacting only to news, LeBron, he gets ruled out and you hit the Lakers immediately and you have that automated, they're going to pick up on that. I don't think you're going to be thrown out immediately, but there's definitely a difference. I don't think it's just blanket winning players. I think it's more what are you betting and how are you betting it that the books probably take notice of more often than not.
Okay, so I'm also curious, like, so every time we get a big piece of breaking news, like for example, LeBron being out, Greg Ehrenberg will be on Live Before Lock or whatever and be like, okay, this is a good bet. I'm going to place a bet on, the money line against the Lakers, whatever it is. He'll immediately act on that. Is that something that you do? Like, do you immediately, are you like very online because you're getting this breaking news all the time and feel the need to immediately make bets as things change? Or is that, I mean, you said that that's a way to get limited. Is that something that you try not to do too much because then you will get limited?
It's definitely I'll say this. My only consideration on whether to bet something is not if I think it's going to win. And what I mean by that, there's definitely situations where I think that speaks to having a lot of books and other avenues to get maybe some money down. But yeah, I mean that's a fantastic. There's nobody sharper with the angles that Greg can find, and I'm on our premium Discord along with him. I've seen the work that he does. You got to be quick. A lot of times you have to, this is one of the many things with betting. You got to be able to say I missed it. I see a lot of people, bet the Lakers at -5. It shoots up to 7.5, and they're like, I'm still going to bet it. And it's just like,
Right.
you really should just pass then. You missed it. You can always, that's a beautiful benefit of betting. You don't have to bet the game. So yeah, if you can get those bets down, it's a great way to build the bankroll. It's great to pepper them in. That's all you're betting. You might not be able to get down as much money as you would like in certain circumstances.
Okay, so it's something that you can do a little bit more as long as you're making other bets as well. So you can take advantage of those things. You
Oh
just need
yeah.
to be a better consistently. You can't just be taking advantage of those
That
things.
would be my personal advice. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with having some of that, or even if you are inferring. Sometimes, if you can say this guy he took a hard fall last night, it's a back to back. We haven't gotten confirmation, but I think he's going to sit. You can try to buy early, and sometimes you get caught the wrong way, but you definitely can take advantage of that stuff. I think it's all a delicate balance with betting more and more.
Okay. And next question from Mike. I really love this question. I think it's an important question. The future of DFS in comparison to the future of sports betting, particularly prop betting and single game parlay betting. So we've seen it here at Stokastic. It seems like people are very interested in sports betting. Like Odd Shopper has really taken off quickly recently. What do you think of? What are your thoughts on the future of DFS in comparison to sports betting, et cetera? Do you think that DFS is kind of going to go by the wayside while sports betting is legalized everywhere? It's obviously taking on a bigger market share. How do you envision things going with sports betting and DFS?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's pretty clear to me that sports betting is the future. But I don't think that that means that DFS is just going to become a dinosaur. I think that what should happen and what I hope happens is that DFS and sports betting merge. And I think we're seeing that more and more with same game parlays, with maybe some like pool centric stuff where you're able to have the element of a GPP, but it's more on the betting side. Everyone picks 10 games against the spread, and you're in a huge tournament like that. I think things like that are very untapped and very cool that the sites could do. So there's no doubt in my mind. The response on Odd Chopper has been amazing. We're growing so quickly, and it's just been great. And we're going to continue to do that because we're really trying to do some innovative stuff over there. But betting is the future, and I think DFS has a real opportunity to still stay relevant. And I hope absolutely hope that it does.
Yeah, me too. As somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience in sports betting, DFS obviously is my favorite. So I'm hoping that it will survive all of this new sports betting. But it is, even if it doesn't go by the wayside, I am concerned that these $1 million contests are going to be $500,000 contests instead, and that's
Yep.
just over time we're gonna lose some luster with DFS. But hopefully, maybe I think there's some possibility that people get involved in sports betting and it's going to lead them to DFS. I don't think it necessarily has to be the end of DFS. So I think I'm with you. It's not necessarily going to become a dinosaur, but yeah, something to watch for, I guess. How about so you do both? You do sports betting and
Yeah.
DFS. Do you ever use sports betting to hedge large DFS stands, or vice versa?
So I do. Funny. I was just thinking about this the other day, unrelated to this, of course. I got to get better with my hedging. I hedge stuff, and then I like reverse middle. I'm just like, what kind of hedge was that? That was just stupid. It can be a little tricky because Neil, I mean, I know this. You've had some amazing success. It's hard to hedge something when in DFS with the top heavy pools where it's like, okay, I have a track to win 6 figures. Like I'm gonna hedge this with like a $400 bet. It's not like you can just say like I'm gonna bet 50 grand on this one thing and just automatically take 50 grand in profit, minus the entry fees or whatever. It's a little more nuanced because with DFS there's so many variables of what you need. Rarely do you have it where it's this or this. Are there situations more in golf because it's like, okay, I'm surrounded by 15 teams that have this one guy, and I can make a live bet on him to win the tournament and get those placement points. I'm going to do that just so I know if he wins, I'm guaranteed this money. And if he doesn't win, I'm at a pretty big advantage. I think there's something to that, but I have noticed in my own data, I have hedges that I'm not proud of, and I need to be better with that because there's something to it. But you want to make sure that you're actually accomplishing what you're trying to do, which is securing money and not opening yourself up for just a bet and a disappointing DFS result.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea to hedge with sports betting, but like as you say, you can hedge and like have everything go almost exactly perfectly and still lose money. Like you can get almost everything right
100%.
and still lose money in DFS. And the scenario you give where you're surrounded by 15 teams with that same player and then betting on that player to win to hedge, well, that player could lose and you could still not win. Like there's so many teams in
Absolutely.
DFS that it's hard to do, but it's definitely an interesting concept. And that sounds like a good scenario where it's at least something worth considering. Let's talk a little bit of DFS process. And you probably kind of answered some of these questions already, but I'll re-ask them anyway. Do you do any of your own simulations or use simulations from outside sources as part of your process for, I guess, DFS or sports betting?
I don't. Basically everything I use, the tools that I use are all our tools, because I believe in them. I know the people behind them. I trust them immensely, and I know that, like, the amount of work it would take for me to get up to speed to do stuff like that is just not worth it. So no, I don't. I keep it very simple. I have advantages, I think, in other areas, and then I lean on the people that I regard as some of the best in the business for that type of stuff.
Okay, so you're not doing your own, but like you're using like the boom bust and stuff like that, where they are
Absolutely.
using simulation. So you're using
Yep.
the stochastic simulations indirectly. You're not seeing the actual sims, but you're seeing kind of the
End
percentage and
result.
stuff given in boom bust. Okay, and then I assume you do use an optimizer.
I don't.
Oh,
So I do, yeah, I do occasionally, but
okay,
no, I build by hand. I've always been that way. Again, there's serious drawbacks to that. I understand them. I think that's where I can get away with it because your goals change at times. When you're playing Showdown, not having 150 bullets in things where crazy outcome, you're looking for like outrageous things. It can be a detriment. I stick a lot more in the 3 max, the 20 max, single
okay.
entry, where I know that to realize your expectation, I'm gonna have to live till I'm 250, but that's all right. I'm willing to sacrifice that because I'm super comfortable with what I do. So when I want to fire 150, I use our optimizer, absolutely. But on a weekly basis, no, I don't.
Actually, I'm pretty similar. Like if I'm making 10 or fewer lineups, I would definitely, even though I understand the benefits of the optimizer, they're telling
Yep.
you who projects the best. I definitely prefer hand building. And like I was saying, with the time that I played college football DFS, that's what I did is I use the optimizer to tell me, okay, who projects well, because I don't even know who the players are in college football. So I'd have an idea of who projects well, and then hand build lineups based on those results. So again, similar to using like the boom buster, you see the end results of a simulation, and then use those end results to kind of inform your hand building. So indirectly, I guess, using an optimizer. But I'm with you. I like to hand build sometimes if I'm only doing a few entries. It's kind of fun, and it's a different kind of puzzle.
Yeah, and
Um,
I've always been, yeah, well said. I think it's just a different feel. And the best of both worlds. I think just understanding when one is maybe a little more necessary to me has always been kind of the my rule of thumb there.
and then okay, yeah, I think you kind of answered this already, but are there any sports you do your own projections from scratch?
No, no,
Okay.
no. I again, it's not because the way I view it, it's like, could I do that? Sure. Am I going to be better than the team we have at Stokastic? No. And I have access to that, and I'm just going to rely on our guys. Will I make minor adjustments? Absolutely, for sure. But no, I don't make my own projections in any sport.
Okay. Same exact thought process here. Same exact reasoning why I don't. And same for ownership projections. Do you do anything for ownership projections on your own?
No, so the only thing, and I think it's something that the industry, we're starting to do more of this everywhere, I think. uh, Trying to pitch your ownership specifically to some tournaments. So the millie is one thing. If you're playing in a 20 man or a 50 man or something, saying, okay, which of these high owned players, the guy that's 25% owned in the millie, he could be 60% owned in a small field. And so I don't do anything from scratch per se, but I definitely am cognizant of how chalky maybe some of that chalk could get in what I'm playing. And sometimes it's not just about that kind of generic, oh, this guy's going to be 15% owned.
Yeah, I'm the same way. So I don't do anything
Okay.
like I don't try to predict the ownership, different from what we have on the site. But it is, I think I'm indirectly thinking about ownership as I'm making some decisions. Like there are sometimes where I'm like, I think this player, just because of recency bias, he's been really successful. I don't like say, I think that this 20% is wrong. I think he's going to be 40%, but I do factor in like, no, he's going to get more steam, and I'm going to try to play less of him because of that. So I think kind of a similar process for me as well. And thinking about ownership, not really doing my own projections, but thinking about it differently for different contests and different scenarios is definitely helpful. So along those lines, how much does ownership play a role for you in creating lineups in DFS?
Yeah, so it's definitely a major factor, and one that, take you all the way back to the beginning. Never even considered it because people didn't know what they were doing. And these guys in these can't miss spots wouldn't even be popular because no one was paying attention to news. Now, particularly with certain sports, like if there's a massive value, you're not saying, is this a good play? You're saying, is it a good play at maybe 55-60% in a top heavy tournament? So it's a really delicate balance. Sometimes you have to open yourself up to saying, wow, I really took an aggressive pivot and it didn't pay off. But long term, I believe that was still the right move. So it's a big part of my puzzle each and every week.
Yeah, that's a good point that it didn't need to be like 5-10 years ago when people didn't know
No,
what they're doing. You didn't have to factor in ownership at all. You could just count on other people making mistakes. Now people aren't really, I mean, there are still plenty of people making big mistakes, but in general, the field is so much better that just from a projection standpoint, people are not making huge mistakes. So you have to, get smarter, outthink the field in other ways, things like ownership. Would you call yourself an exploitative player?
I think to some degree. I think some of that's related to kind of what we're talking about with the field of, certainly everyone is getting more up to speed, and the number of people who just wing it these days and don't use any help from anywhere is so minimal that I think some of those advantages that open up are being minimized. So you have to look for some other things. But I've always kind of, again, I think this comes from poker, a lot of it, where it's just like you're playing somebody else that you don't have to get to like there's not like a target score. You have to beat everyone else. If everyone else for some reason got 0, you would win with 1. So it's about just being a little better than everyone else rather than saying I have to be perfect. I'm playing against the house or something along those lines. So in that regard, I think I do try to lean on maybe some of the few remaining general misconceptions out there.
Let me take a minute away from this conversation with Ben Rasa to tell you about our sponsor, OddsShopper. Make your best bets in 30 seconds or less with OddsShopper. With hundreds of bets featured daily, OddsShopper gives you the edge you need betting player props and game lines across all sports. Sign up for free now via the link in the video description below to gain access to our proprietary data, which will help you make your best bets. With expected win percentages and ROIs included, OddsShopper uses the same DFS projections we use here at Stokastic to filter out the best bets available. OddsShopper also features a parlay builder with optimized parlays and an arbitrage tool that identifies risk-free, guaranteed profit bets that you can make across sports books. What about so you've talked a little bit about Showdown. So first of all, when you're talking about Showdown, are you talking about NFL Showdown or PGA Showdown or just like Showdown generally?
Mostly NFL Showdown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you a big do play PGA Showdown? I know that a couple the people that I've had on the shows, the PGA guys have been like, oh, PGA Showdown is where all the money is. That's Jesse downside of me on Twitter is all about PGA Showdown. People seem to think that that's where you have the biggest edge. Do you play PGA Showdown at all?
Not as much as I should. I agree with that. I think there's a lot of intricacies of like weather splits, tee time splits, because it's only one round. It's 18 holes. So like you can dig in. I've done a poor job at that. It's on the list. No, I love NFL. I mean, I'm talking to the king himself of NFL Showdown. I love NFL Showdown. It's just a blast. It's outrageous, but no, that's really where I spend most of my Showdown time. Hope to add more PGA this year though.
And so for you in NFL Showdown, are you playing the biggest contests or are you focusing more on smaller field stuff?
So I do play. So again, this I think goes back to understanding because I love to gamble. That's one thing. Like I go to casinos. Like I like to gamble. I'm definitely putting in my entries into a tournament where other people have 150 and I have 11 or 7. And I know that that's probably minus EV in some regard. I like the team, so that combats it, but I'm okay with that. Those teams are more built for 3 max or satellites or things like that. And that's really where I'm more concerned. But I'm someone that I'm not sure I would recover if I didn't have the team in there. And I want a ticket with the optimal, with the nuts. And it was like a 3-way chop, and I cost myself a couple $100,000 by just not putting it in there. So I treat those as lotto tickets. I do throw them in the biggest contest. Yes.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, so you make your lineups for like a 3 max, a 5 max, whatever else, but then you throw it into the lotto as well, just because you'd be kicking yourself if you didn't have it in there.
Correct.
I am I am the exact same way. It's funny, we actually just last night in NBA, John Breslin, a former guest on this show, would have won the NBA Millie last night if he had played his cash lineup in the Millie. He didn't play it because he did what is probably the smart thing, which is differentiating your lineups for different contests. You don't play your cash lineup in a GPP. Makes all the sense in the world. I can't get myself to do that because I'm like, because of that exact reason. Like I would just be kicking myself. I would never recover, as you said, from not having it.
Couldn't recover 100%. That is the, like, let me tell, if you can stomach it, you don't want the optimal build for a cash or single entry is so different than what you should be doing when you're trying to beat 100,000 people. And I try to be cognizant of that, but at a lower dollar where I say, okay, you know what, these are $5 entries or $10, whatever, I'm willing to sacrifice some of that just in case. I am. And that's just a personal choice. I fully understand the ramifications, because I know that, talk about therapy bills, I would not be able to recover if I missed out on that.
It's a plus EV decision for you and for me
Life.
because of the therapy. Yeah, the life therapy, the plus EV decision.
Correct.
I'm 100% with you there. Okay, so if you're building for other contests, so a big thing for me is I avoid trying to be duplicated too much in those larger field GPPs. Is that a big part of your strategy at all for any contest? Just avoiding having your lineups duplicated by other players?
It's a huge part. Again, I've seen a lot of people say like, what do you work, oh, you're chopping for whatever 600K instead of 1 million. Like, that's pretty good deal. Like, yes, of course, but your equity is like, you do not want to be doing that. Now, you in Showdown, of course, there's an element of you're going to be, but you can minimize the dupes, and that's still a win in some regards, particularly if you have a highly projected lineup that's a little different. It's nice to get that middle ground. But yeah, I really do try to avoid, those 200 or 300 team trains that, even if you happen to have that lineup, which is still incredibly rare to win, you're not getting paid off like maybe you would if you were able to differentiate.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. When we talk about avoiding being duplicated, we're not necessarily, especially in these large fields, I'm not trying to make lineups that are entirely unique. I mean, obviously, I'd prefer it if they're good lineups, that I'm the only one who has it, but we're just trying to avoid those major duplication. Maybe, I aim for like under 10 dupes in the largest field NFL. Yeah, it's a huge win. So yeah, definitely a big part of my process as well. What about sweating the game? So different people, definitely different. I'm going to assume that you do sweat the games because you love the gambling aspect of it so much. Do you sweat the games after you set lineups?
I was going to ask you, I was going to say, do you think I sweat the games? Yeah, I sweat the games. I sweat the games hard. I will say, it's weirdly different. I don't know why this is. Like, my sweat for betting versus my sweats for DFS are just different. They have a unique feel, but yeah, I definitely watch a ton of sports. I rarely, if ever, am not sweating what I'm betting or DFS lineups.
Yeah, I mean, if you're sports betting for the love of the game, like you are, and like I am, I think what's the point of doing it if you're not going to be sweating the games? Obviously, making money is nice too, but that's the whole fun of it. All right, we've got some listener questions. I'll start with this one from Aha Bro, which he didn't really ask a question, but then I made a question out of it because I am very curious. I'm glad you have the same background today that you usually do. So Aha Bro says, he should know I bought the Seinfeld print on his wall as a gift for my brother. It was perfect. So there is your comment from Aha Bro. But then I wanted to say, tell me a little bit about the background, the stuff that is on the wall behind you. I can't even figure out which Seinfeld print I don't see a Seinfeld print there. Which one am I missing?
So I got people, if you don't know what like it is, you're like, what the hell is that? It's just like various items from Seinfeld. You got like the Bosco, the black and white cookie, the Pez dispenser, just like some of the more classic things from the show. My background, I mean, I kind of just threw it together. I spent a lot of time in Saratoga because I love to gamble on horses. My parents are big like horse bettors and they have fun with that. So every time I'm up there, I don't know why I end up picking up like a horse pitcher. And so like I have a bunch of those behind me. I have that. Ironically, and this is kind of I have a couple bobbleheads, which is just the thing I get asked the most by far. I have a green cup on the wall behind me, and I'm from New York, but when I go to Florida, I go to this place called Flanagan's. It's really good ribs, and they give you the cup. The number of people that recognize that cup and say, "Are you from South Florida?" Like, and I'm just like, "No, but I love that place." It's incredible how many people recognize that. So yeah, it's a little mishmash of some horse pitchers, some bobbleheads, and a couple pop culture references, I guess you could say.
Okay, but I want to get a little bit more specific. I like the green cup. I think I see an autograph on one of those horse pictures. Does the horse sign with its mouth or with its
Yeah, he
with
just
its hoof? How does the
right
horse
after the
autograph that?
race with his hoof. Yeah, man. Like I said, I love the track. That was really like if you want to really go back, like what was I betting on when I was actually a kid? Like it was horses, which is just a money pit, but it's really fun. So I got those, and then I have a bobblehead of myself. I had a buddy after the one in the middle is just a bobblehead
Okay.
of me. It dressed as a golfer. It says Jazz Raz on it. When I won, I was fortunate enough to win something, and I had a couple friends actually make that and send it to me, which is very cool.
Taller than I thought you were. You're
Yeah,
towering
man,
over that other
they
athlete.
very generous on these bobbleheads. I wish that was reality in real life.
Who,
But
who is the bobblehead next to you in that on that
so
shelf?
that's just a job at Saratoga. They have like a give. I don't know why they do that. They give you a bobblehead. I think for opening day or one of those like giveaways. So it's one of the jockeys.
Okay,
I want to say
nice.
it's Jerry Bailey, but I don't even know. I have to look behind me.
All right, and then is that a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle on the other side of you?
Oh yeah, that's let's see. Yeah, we got
Donatello?
a
Is it Donatello?
no, it's Michelangelo,
Raphael? Oh, Michelangelo's
little
orange.
orange action. I've got him. I've got the very rare and not many people. I have the Crash Bandicoot. Like I don't even know what he is. Just I don't know if you know Crash Bandicoot.
I
It's like
don't.
that. It's well, it's gonna be tough to explain because I can't even explain it. There's like a he looks like a witch doctor kind of. He's next to the green cup. He's back
Okay.
there. Don't
Yep,
even
yep.
know his name. Poor guy.
I see him.
Yeah,
Who's on the other side of the green cup?
that is another jockey.
Okay. And a
Couldn't
golf
tell you
is
who.
that a golf ball that it was next to the Ninja Turtle?
Yes, that's a golf ball. Shout out to DraftKings. They sent me like some custom cool golf balls, thinking that like, oh, this guy,
Oh.
he's an insanely like he plays a ton of PGA. He must be a golfer, and like I'm an awful golfer. So, but
Nice.
I appreciate that.
I learned that Jake Hari did not play hockey like in high school. He didn't play hockey. I always assumed that he was a huge hockey player because he's
Yeah,
our NHL
Minnesota
guy.
kid.
He's a basketball player growing up. I was like, what? That
What?
that kind of shocked me. All right, one final question about the wall. Who are the Hartford Whalers?
The Hartford Whalers, oh, the team of my youth. So I mean, now they're the Carolina Hurricanes.
Okay.
Hockey team used to go to their games all the time. Because getting to this, like, I live right above New York City, but to get down to the city is it's tough. Like, you got to take, the train, blah, blah, blah. You get to MSG for the Rangers or go down to the island for the Islanders. Going to Hartford was super easy. So, like, my parents, they would just take me to Whalers games. I loved them as a kid. I was sad to see them go, but always, always shout out to the Hartford Whalers.
We lost the North Stars here in Minnesota. We have the Wild now, which
You
is
got the
nice. But
Wild.
yeah, we also lost our hockey team for a while. So I didn't really care because I was a basketball fan, but sort of I'm sure some people felt the same way that you felt about the Whalers. All right, that'll do it for my wall questions. Alex K14 asked, can you talk about how you size your bets, i.e., should I always bet the same amount? Should I always bet the amount that wins me the same amount based on the payout? How do you size bets on a sport for a season?
Yes, that's a real good question. Sharp guy, always in our chat. Uh, I don't think there's a perfect answer. I think that like anything, if you're trying to be completely like technically correct, I would look for some type of like Kelly criterion, which is something that's basically like going to help you size and adjust your bets constantly based on your perceived edge. Because the biggest number one pitfall for I see it every day in our Discord and just in general with sports betting is people not understanding how just like DFS, the risk of ruin if you're not properly rolled is so immense. Even if you know what you're doing, you're going to get gobbled up on an outlier bad streak. So you need to budget and properly bet size that is okay, that you can survive just normal variance. And that's something I think is really important. How I bet, I look at myself as a pretty flat better. I kind of have a pretty small incremental betting scale that I'm comfortable with. When the second part of that question, that wins me the same amount based on the payoff? I don't bet a ton of parlays. If I did, I would probably structure it where I'd be allocating less risk to win what I would view as, a somewhat worthwhile reward, rather than laying, say, a standard 1 unit on something where it's like I get 20 units from this, but like, 95% of the time I'm going to lose. So I think that if you're really trying to be disciplined, get a bankroll, have your amount, and then use a criterion that says like, okay, I have $50 units. I'm going to increase these as I win and decrease these as I lose. So I don't go broke. I don't run out of my bankroll. And I've kind of, in my own way, have that just because I've been doing this for a really long time.
Okay. And you also probably have a pretty good idea generally about like, I mean, I would assume that you want to be betting based on your confidence in the pick. You described
Correct.
it as how much edge you have, which I assume if you're good at this, it should be the edge you have is related to how much confidence you have in the pick. So essentially, you should be betting more generally if you are more confident in the bet.
Absolutely. Again, all within, if you can weather the storm. I think I've learned this from a lot of really sharp people, much sharper than me, that have told me this in various different industries. I think something that people maybe underutilize is not, and I'm terrible at this, I wish I was better. Like, if you have a spot and it's a kill spot, like, I'm not saying, mortgage the house, but don't let it pass. Like, you don't get that many opportunities to really make a dent. So like, if you have done your work and you have something that you say, I know for a fact, in everything that I trust in my process, that this is a great spot, like, I don't think it's a bad idea to be really aggressive and say, if this doesn't work, I recover, I grind back, and then I look for the next shot. But I've done more than a few times in my life where I say, yeah, I got paid off on that, and I should have really gotten paid off because I was early and I was ready, and I didn't really unload as much as I should have, based on the confidence. And that's a leak. That's something that you can and should be better on.
Yeah, and that as you said, it does apply everywhere. Like DFS, if you're confident in your approach to a given slate, like a lot of people think that you should just play the exact same amount of money on every slate. Well,
Yep.
that's not really the best approach. You should be playing more on the slates that you think you have an edge on. And if you don't think you have an edge on a given slate, and there are some slates like for NBA, for example, there's no real injury news. Everybody's kind of priced appropriately, owned appropriately. You should probably cut back on those slates and then play more on the slates where you have more of an edge. And then same thing with like individual player exposures. Like if you
Yep.
think the field is way wrong on this player and everybody's under projecting him, then you should be playing a significant amount of that player. You shouldn't just try to be like a little bit above the field. If you think the field is way off, you should be way above the field. So I think that's really well said. That across all of these industries, you need to find edge where you can, and double down if you really think you have some edge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's something. If you have too rigid of an approach, like you mentioned, I know a lot of people that say like, I play this amount on every slate, and it's like, well, as you mentioned, what if there's a slate where your number one projected player is a guy that the field can't hates? Like, that might be a time, if you really trust what you're doing, to make a stand, to say, this is a slate where I know I'm going to have leverage, natural leverage, and things like that. So I've tried to say, in certain sports, in certain times of the year, like, this is the time for me. Like, it's time to really pick my spots and make an impact, because I know that my edge is bigger at those moments.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, we have one final listener question from Michael Campbell, Shaky on Twitter. Yeah, I know who he is.
I
I says,
do.
okay, yes, Mike Campbell, friend of the PGA Show, wants to know if you think putting is a real thing.
Oh yeah, putting. We could do a show just on that. Putting is all too real, but at the same time, it's somewhat of a Ponzi scheme, because it's all very the putting is something that is so important, but to accurately project it is near impossible. The thing is, I mean, the easiest way to describe it, you can't suddenly drive the ball 300 yards. Like, if you don't hit it far, you just don't hit it far. Anyone can roll in some 50 footers, even if you're a bad putter. Like, everyone can do it. There's not like a physical limitation. There's not anything else. So you see time and time again in golf, a bad putter get hot for 72 holes and he's hoisting a trophy. You rarely see in golf a terrible driver of the ball out driving the best drivers, because how would that happen? It's just not, speed, all things. Like you don't see that really changing. Putting is such a volatile stat.
Okay, so now I'm starting to understand why people tilt putting so much. Like I see on Twitter, like Jesse, another good example, downside of me being, oh, of course strokes
Yep.
gained putting is plus whatever, and I'm like, yeah, so he putted well. You should pick players who are going to putt well. Like so it's unpredictable. Is that the reason that people tilt
It's,
so much about strokes gained putting or
I
whatever,
mean,
all these different metrics?
there obviously are some good putters. There's no doubt, but on a given week, like I said, the best golfers off the tee will be positive off the tee. I'd say in 90% of the tournaments for the year, maybe more. The best putters, like they'll have tournaments where they lose 3 or 4 strokes putting, and it means nothing. Like that's just what happens. They don't have it that round. They don't have it that week. There's just no way to consistently be good at that because it's just so high variance. So it's so frustrating to see a guy. This is why golf is so crazy. You target a guy for ball striking and say you fade him, and then he gets there because he gained 8 strokes putting. That is so frustrating because you're like, everyone liked him for something else, and he has bailed himself out with a club that nobody anticipated just because it's all luck.
Okay, interesting. I did not realize how much luck there is involved in
Oh
putting.
my
It makes
God.
sense. I mean, I've tried putting on some. I'm a terrible golfer also, but I tried golfing on something. And I'm like, just like the little different grades on the. I don't know. It is tough. So I guess it does make sense. So that would be a higher variance kind of spot as opposed to, yeah, hitting off the tee. Like some people are just going to be able to hit it better. That's interesting. I had not thought about that as much. Maybe I'll become better at PGA if I just think about it a little bit more. Okay. All right. So we're going to close it out. Can you tell me about your favorite win or win celebration in DFS or sports betting? I guess you could, whichever one is your favorite. Tell me about, and you can tell me about multiple if you have a few that are close there.
Um, so I'd say my most memorable, I think like a lot of things, my most memorable win is the first time I had some really good success in PGA, and then I had a huge breakthrough at the Masters handful of years ago. And I think the thing that made it super memorable was that I actually was at my parents' house. I went over there for Sunday, and what happened was it got to the last hole in the last group, and I needed Ricky Fowler to make, say, about a 10-foot putt, for a lot of money, an extra 6 figures and whatnot. And I was watching, me and my girlfriend and my mom, and my dad happened to be watching in another room. And Ricky went to line up the putt, and all of a sudden I heard a scream of a yes. And I quickly realized that his TV was probably about 10 seconds ahead of it. And the relief that I felt not having to sweat the putt, basically kind of, I was sweating it, but I knew that it had to have gone in, was a good feeling. That was a fun one. It was, you always wonder, am I ever going to, I've been like a lot of people really close. Like I came in second in the golf, like their quote live final. I came in second in the Millie in football. And I'm like, am I ever going to, come in first in something really meaningful? And to do that one time in PJ was super exciting. And for it to be Ricky, who's one of my favorite golfers, was just one I'll definitely never forget.
It is such a relief when you win for the first time because I think most of us, like, we don't win right away. It takes several, like you get second place 10 times before you get your first place. And it just feels impossible to win until you do it. Like it changes it. Like you go from thinking it's just like there's something going, like there's some reason that I cannot win in these sports. Like I'm cursed. Yeah, exactly. And then you finally win. It kind of changes your whole perspective. So that's really fun. And it's fun that your first one, you were actually with people. I ask this question every time. Tell me what your favorite win or win celebration. And half the time it's like, yeah, I was by myself, did a little fist pump. It's like people by. So it's fun that you had your parents there, your girlfriend there. Definitely helps the experience a little bit.
Yeah. And it's, again, I've been really fortunate that I've gotten in contention a lot, and I've had some really cool wins along the way and all that. But like, as you mentioned, and you get this, and listen, I totally understand. You come in second in something, it's amazing. When you look back, you're like, wow, that was a huge score. But at the moment, there's an element, at least for me, you're just like, what could have been?
Yeah.
Like, even though it's a great day. And so just to finally say, like, I did it. It's a validating feeling. You know, and it's just one that you say like, okay, they can never take that away from me. Like I did ultimately at some of the highest levels, I took one down, and that is a really cool feeling.
Yeah, first place, you have no regrets. Second place,
Yeah.
you think about every little thing that could have gone a little bit differently. Especially with the huge difference in the way the prize pools are structured. It's like 100,000 a first, 20,000 a second, or like similar stuff across the prize pools. It's like monetarily, it's a huge difference. And then the milli, and then 150,000 a first.
Yeah,
a second.
So the milli, again, I'm gonna sound like a jackass, but the truth, like the milli, it's $1 million to first, and I came in second, and I got 100 grand, which is awesome. But
yeah,
if that one guy overslept that day, I would have multiple more horse pitchers behind me. And it would be a lot easier. But yeah, that's just the nature of it.
Yeah, just no regrets versus some regrets, and also a lot of money. So yeah, it is a different thing. As fun as it is to win second sometimes. All right, Ben, where can people find you?
So first of all, just thanks for having me on. I had a blast. This was awesome.
Thank you for coming on.
Of course, you can find me here along with Neil and everyone. It's part of the Stokastic family, but more and more, even though I definitely am on this channel, you can find me over on our Odd Chopper YouTube. I've really taken up a lot in the betting space here with Stokastic, and I've started to help a lot more there. So if your state has come on, if you want to learn more about betting, you want to have some fun, check out Odd Chopper YouTube, and then of course in our premium Discord, I'm a part of a team in there. We have a great community. We sweat a lot of bets. We talk a lot of strategies. We answer a lot of questions like this show, not just about who do I play, this guy or this guy, but hey, talk to me about Excel. Talk to me about bankroll management. Talk to me about how do you weather the swings? How do you not go crazy? Just a lot of fun in there. So you of course can find me on Twitter at JazzRazDFS, but anytime you see Stokastic and Odd Chopper, I hope to be a part of it, and you'll see me around these parts for sure.
So I don't think I've ever been, I don't think I'm even signed up for the Odd Chopper Discord, because again, I can't sports bet here, but it's probably, do you think it'd be valuable for somebody like me who's just a DFS player? Can we learn stuff from the Odd Chopper Discord?
You absolutely can. So it's within the home of the Stokastic Discord. It's just some different channels in there, and there are several people that are in there that either bet very casually or just say, you know what, I just want to learn kind of some different strategies, because I think all we talked about today, from poker to DFS to betting, there's so much overlap. And if you can nail down some of those overarching strategies, you'll be better at whatever craft, whatever you're passionate about. I really believe that. So it's not just, hey, I'm a professional sports bettor, I want to be in this Discord. I think there's a lot of fun, of course, and then just valuable information no matter what you're doing.
Okay, I didn't even realize that it was in the same Stokastic Discord. So I am already part of the Discord, apparently, because it's in the Stokastic one. That's how bad I am at Discord in general. I miss messages for like days at a time. I'm bad at managing my Discord, but that's good to know. I'm gonna start checking it out. Okay, thanks, Ben, for coming on. It was a lot of fun to have you on for episode 27 of High Stakes. Thank you to Mike Lawrence for producing, as always, and thank you, the audience, for listening. If you can catch episode 28 of High Stakes 2 weeks from today, so Friday, I don't know what date it's going to be, 2 weeks from today. Catch episode 28 of High Stakes on the Stokastic YouTube or anywhere you can find podcasts.